Hello and welcome to the Movilith, the show whose parents couldn't afford space camp. I'm Mark Acosta.
And I'm Stephen Calvin.
That's right, and today we're continuing our discussion on space movies. In the last episode, we explored true stories about NASA and the space race, but today we'll venture a little bit further and discuss what we're calling plausible space movies. That is, space movies that don't quite reach the level of science fiction because they're rooted in the reality of space travel, and while they do take some creative license with the science, they're still realistic enough to be called plausible. So today we'll be talking about 4 movies: Space Cowboys, directed by Clint Eastwood; Gravity, directed by Alfonso Cuarón; The Martian, directed by Ridley Scott; and a 4th mystery movie which we can't quite reveal until the end. Yeah, so let's get into Space Cowboys, which sort of helps transition us from our last episode because some of these next ones go a little bit into the near future, whereas this one, this movie came out in the year 2000. I mean, I guess at the time it was sort of an alternate present, and now it's become the past. But that movie is the one that's the most rooted in the reality of NASA itself and our actual time period in our world. Whereas the other ones sort of extrapolate a little bit further into the future of NASA and things like that.
Oh yeah, we could definitely see NASA having done a mission kind of similar to this in a way.
And sort of takes place around the shuttle era of NASA and sort of really rooted in that era of NASA space travel. Basically, this is about a group of sort of would-be astronauts at the very beginning of the space race whose mission ends up getting canceled, and they never really end up getting to go to space. But all these decades later, they're suddenly needed to help assess and repair a decaying Soviet satellite that uses technology developed by Clint Eastwood's character Frank. And so it's sort of a situation of let's get the whole band back together.
Yeah.
So they get the old crew back together, which is comprised of Clint Eastwood, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, and James Garner. Some very classic old Hollywood actors, all in their older age here in this movie, playing sort of older men going into space. And there are a lot of old men in space jokes in this movie. The idea of these old men having to go into outer space and do all the rigorous things that astronauts have to do.
I'm an engineer, for crying out loud. I stopped running when Nixon was president.
Come on, your lady doctor's watching. Let's go.
She is?
Oh, no.
The opening sequence shows them when they're young. We have actors playing all the characters when they're a lot younger.
100,000. What do you say we buck our nose into space, Frank?
No, that's enough, Hawk. We're approaching heat barrier. Let's level off.
Frank, look at that. That's where we're going. I don't know how and I don't know when, but fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Oh, come on, baby, come on.
And it's sort of this opening sequence sort of roots the whole movie. You see how their mission got canceled, how they were this close to becoming astronauts, and then the whole mission kind of went belly up. And there's also James Cromwell's character, plays the mission control character. He's kind of the villain of the movie. He's the one that canceled their mission, and these years later, he's the one that's in control of their mission. So this sort of sets up the whole, the rest of the movie here.
Effective immediately, the Air Force's formal involvement in outer atmosphere testing and exploration is hereby terminated. A new civilian agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is this day chartered.
What about the pilots? Who's going to be the first American in space?
Well, a decision has been made after an exhaustive search. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet Mary Ann, the first American to cross into outer space. Oh, look, Frank, she wants to shake your hand. You bastard. Shake her hand for the cameras, Frank. That is an order.
That was pretty cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of connects us with the right stuff, which we talked about in the last episode. I believe it's Edwards Air Force Base again, right? Just like in the right stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're out in the desert.
They have a little establishing shot right after that clip that will show that they're over at Edwards Air Force Base once they get chewed out by the younger James Cromwell character.
Yeah. So that scene really connects us to the right stuff in those early days of the space race. And even referencing the idea that the earliest astronauts that we sent out were chimpanzees and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Interesting little tidbit that I found in after I've watched this film because I was curious about the chimp.
Yeah.
They said Mary Ann, but the real shrimp name was Ham.
Yeah.
And actually, him got their training at Holloman Air Force Base in Alamogordo here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. That's cool.
That was pretty cool, little tidbit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love this movie because like it's of the whole like set of movies that we've chosen for this segment.
Yeah.
This one's probably the most lighthearted.
Yeah, this one's a little more fun and less serious than some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of old men in space jokes. And there's a lot about the dynamic between the older astronauts and the younger astronauts because they're doing sort of a joint mission. The older astronauts have a group of younger astronauts as well. And there's like the scenes where they send them like the old men food.
Gentlemen, a round of drinks from your friends at the table over there. A little Ensure for you guys.
Cheers.
And then the older astronauts send them like the baby food.
From your teammates at the table over there. Gerber's baby food. Oh, and some training material for you to look over. Pictures for the bigger words.
There's some like funny dynamic between them there.
And funny because like I was looking into it, like Project Daedalus.
Yeah.
Daedalus is like the father of Icarus.
Yeah,
So,
he's the
like-
one that actually completed the flight, right? Whereas
Yeah.
Icarus, his wings melted in the sun and he died.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
it's more like wisdom overcoming like the younger people.
One piece of research that I found was at the time that this movie was made, the oldest person in space was John Glenn at the age of 77 years old. And there's even a scene where Clint Eastwood references that.
I'm the man to fix it for you.
I don't know how to break this to you, Frank, but you're an old man.
Hell, you sent up Glenn, didn't you?
At this point now, there's been a lot of old people in space, like William Shatner, a lot of astronauts that didn't get the chance to go to space through the private space agencies have got the chance to go to space and stuff now. So yeah, there's the age of people that have been going into space more recently has definitely gone up.
Yeah, because I was just thinking like here in Mexico, like what Richard Branson went to space.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he's in his 70s.
Okay.
He might be even older.
Yeah, a few years ago when they did the space flight, yeah, he's got to be at least in his 70s. I guess one thing I want to mention about this movie is there's this actor named Lauren Dean that I want to point out. He was in Apollo 13 as one of the NASA engineers, and then he appears as one of the astronauts in this movie. And I just want to point him out because he'll appear at least one more time on our journey through space, through these space movies here. And it's an example of how sometimes certain actors will be known for being in a certain genre, and certain directors will like having seen them in a movie and they'll be like, I want them in this movie too. It happens a lot with like Westerns and certain other movies, and it's true of space movies. We'll see Ed Harris pops up in a couple of these movies, but just keep an eye on this actor, Lauren Dean. He'll pop up in one more movie on our journey here through near space.
Yeah.
Another thing I like about this movie is the CGI still holds up today pretty well. For a movie that came out in 2000, it actually still looks pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they did have to use a lot of CGI in this one because I know NASA had offered the use of their special plane that mimics gravity, but Clint Eastwood and a lot of the older actors were like, I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, they weren't. It's not like the guys in Apollo 13, like Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and Bill Paxton were a lot younger when they made that movie.
Yeah.
And they call it the vomit comet for a reason because apparently going up and free falling like that over and over again can really make you nauseous. So yeah, I can understand why they didn't do that. Most movies nowadays, they just do, when we get into The Martian a little bit later, there's some behind the scenes stuff where you can see they have like the bands that hold them up or whatever, and they're kind of like just floating and mimicking the stuff. But yeah. But yeah, I guess we could talk about the actors a little bit. Clint Eastwood and Tommy Lee Jones are the main two guys, and they're kind of reconnecting all these years later. Donald Sutherland and James Garner are part of the crew as well, but really Clint Eastwood and Tommy Lee Jones are like the core of this movie here.
Yeah. Marcia Gay Harden.
Oh, Marcia Gay Harden, yeah.
Marcia Gay Harden.
She's one of the mission control people, and she's great in this movie too.
Oh yeah, and James Cromwell.
James Cromwell's a great villain. I mean, because you got the four dudes that are on the crew, but the other old man in the movie is James Cromwell, and he's mission control. He was always like one of the people at the base. The way he sort of ruthlessly controls these missions is very interesting. Yeah. They really have to overcome him in certain ways throughout this movie.
It's kind of funny how like James Cromwell's character, he's the villain.
He's lying the whole movie, right? Because he knows.
There is like a conspiracy with him and the Russian in that movie. And you don't, at the end of it, you don't feel that like he's going to get any retribution for any of that. He kind of plays it off like to the Russian guy. He's like, whoa, what the heck?
Well, Gene, you were right to be concerned about this thing coming out of orbit. It happens to have 6 armed nuclear warheads on board.
What's he talking about?
I have no idea. General, is there something you want to tell us?
Yeah, that guy was a total traitor in the movie, so.
Yeah.
Hey, this is all news to me.
So yeah, this movie kind of is a good transition from our last episode, which was about real historic NASA movies. And this one's probably the closest to all of those ones, whereas the next few movies we'll explore get a little more into the science fiction, a little bit more into the, what could potentially happen in the future sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess, yeah, that's a good transition from going to Space Cowboys into Gravity, which came out in 2013, directed by Alfonso Cuarón. And this is a really great movie because this movie sort of takes us to the next step. We're not really going far into outer space. This is really just like orbiting around the Earth. This is about a group of astronauts on a spacewalk. They're upgrading some hardware on the Hubble Space Telescope, I believe, in the movie, when a satellite collapse chain reaction, which is caused by the Russians detonating a spy satellite. When this chain reaction starts, it destroys their spacecraft and causes this catastrophic chain reaction of satellites collapsing into each other, orbiting around Earth.
Yeah, I believe it's called the Kessler syndrome.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's a name for it.
Yeah, there's a name for it because it's one of those things that is definitely plausible. To happen in outer space.
Yeah, and this is where we can kind of get into the idea of like plausibility within these movies. Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist, obviously has a lot to say about these movies when they come out, movies that have anything to do with science. And so we have a clip here about Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about some of the things in this movie that are plausible and some of the things that are a little bit more take more creative license.
My favorite part, I thought it was really poignant when she teared up, recognizing her mortality, and enough tear collected in the eye so that one of the drops floated off of her face. I thought that was a heavy hammer there, but they did some actual experiments with tears on the space station, and the surface tension of the liquid actually will more likely have it stay connected to your cheek. Surface tension is what will allow a drop of water to come down here and not just fall off, it'll sort of come horizontally a little bit. That's surface tension. It overrides gravity at those levels. So we saw the tear, we got it. But I thought that was poignant. A great scene with the fire extinguisher, ways to propel yourself in space. How terrifying it was that the broken particles of the satellites coming at such speed. That's scary stuff. By the way, the total satellite destruction scenario, it's real. One satellite can take out 10. They each take out another 10. Go from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1,000 in a matter of days. You could maybe a month. Total satellite destruction if you go around smashing satellites. Don't do it. I got in big trouble when I sent out some tweets about Gravity. I just thought people would be interested to know what they didn't get right. In fact, I didn't even say they got it wrong. I just said these were mysteries of the movie. Why is it that Sandra Bullock, a medical doctor, is repairing the Hubble Space Telescope? Excuse me, we don't send medical doctors to repair the Hubble Space Telescope any more than we're going to send a mechanical engineer to do open heart surgery on you. Please. Okay, so I tweeted that. And it might have had a little emotional flavor to it, but still. What I didn't tweet were the 100 things it got right. I celebrate the movie for its effort to get so much right. It's unfortunate that my initial salvo of tweets were interpreted as me somehow not liking the movie. I enjoyed the movie immensely.
It's like, we enjoyed the movie too.
Yeah. Yeah, I have enough suspension of disbelief that I can learn about what's real and what isn't and still completely enjoy the movie. So I'm always interested in learning the science behind it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I guess what's interesting about this movie takes place almost entirely in outer space, orbiting around Earth, and that makes it interesting. And it's about, I guess what makes this movie interesting, it's about Sandra Bullock's character and the outer struggle of her having to survive this catastrophic satellite chain collapse, but it's also about her inner struggle, the inner struggle of a woman who seems to have lost hope in life after the death of her daughter. And it's her outer struggle trying to survive this catastrophic situation, but her sort of inner struggle overcoming that turmoil that she's had to deal with.
Yeah, she gives a very powerful performance, definitely.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that could lead to our clip here for Gravity. This scene shows George Clooney's character showing up again to help Sandra Bullock out when she seems to have lost hope in her situation. And he sort of explains how she has to sort of find that courage to survive. And we can throw that clip here.
So gloomy in here, isn't it?
How did you?
Trust me, it's a hell of a story.
But how did you?
That's better. I found a little extra battery power. It helps I didn't have you around to distract me. I have to say, I'm glad to see you. I didn't think you were gonna make it. Did you find the vodka? All right. Let's get out of here. The Chinese station's about 100 miles. Just a little Sunday drive.
I can't.
Sure we can.
There's no fuel. I tried everything.
Well, there's always something we can do.
I tried everything.
Did you try the soft landing jets?
They're for landing, so...
Well, landing is launching. It's the same thing. Didn't you learn about that in training?
I never got to land the simulator, I told you.
But you know about it.
And I crashed it
Listen,
every time.
you want to go back or do you want to stay here? I get it. It's nice up here. You can just shut down all the systems, turn out all the lights. You just close your eyes and tune out everybody. There's nobody up here that can hurt you. It's safe. And what's the point of going on? What's the point of living? Your kid died. Doesn't get any rougher than that. But still, it's a matter of what you do now. If you decide to go, then you gotta just get on with it. Sit back, enjoy the ride. You gotta plant both your feet on the ground and start living life.
How did you get here?
I'm telling you, it's a hell of a story. Hey, Ryan.
What?
It's time to go home.
Nice.
Yeah. I love Alfonso Cuarón's style just because he likes to do those long takes.
He really loves the long shots. Yeah, Children of Men and some of his other movies really have a lot of long shots. This movie has some really good long shots too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that scene's great because it really shows, it's all about Sandra Bullock finding that courage to continue, even though she's suffered some tragedy. It's about, finding that will to survive and will to move on.
Yeah. Solve one problem, move on to the next. And just keep doing that.
And so, like kind of the obstacles she has to face in this movie is that their spacecraft got completely destroyed. So they have to try and go to one of the Russian spacecrafts and then one of the Chinese spacecraft to try and get on a craft that can land her back home and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Man, this movie held up really well. And it's pretty short too. It's only 90 minutes long.
But yeah, this movie has some really beautiful long shots, really great visuals that don't overwhelm the story. It's all the core of the story is the emotional journey that Sandra Bullock's on, and all of the CGI and stuff like that really helps to serve that purpose, I think.
Oh yeah. One thing that I found through also the research here is that Alfonso Cuarón had wanted to make this movie for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't initially because what he wanted to do was so ambitious that they didn't have, I guess, the technology.
Yeah.
And but his good friends with James Cameron, and James Cameron finished making Avatar.
Yeah.
And then he was able to adapt some of James Cameron's equipment stuff and make this movie.
Nice. That's cool.
Because I think it was when it was released. Remember, it was all in 3D. It was all 3D captured.
I believe I saw this movie in theaters. When it came out.
I know I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was one of those times where it was when Avatar came out, you saw in 3D, and then this one.
That was the big 3D boom around that time period. Yeah.
The 3D renaissance.
Yeah. I guess we could also mention Ed Harris has a quick voice cameo in this as one of the mission control people.
Explorer, this is Houston. NORAD reports a Russian satellite has incurred a missile strike. The impact has created a cloud of debris orbiting at 20,000 miles per hour.
And that goes to the point I was making earlier about how some of these actors will appear in multiple movies within a genre. So Ed Harris obviously was in The Right Stuff and Apollo 13, and so they clearly asked him to do a quick voice cameo in here as a tribute to those old space movies too. So so that's kind of cool. I guess one last thing I want to mention about the movie. One of my favorite scenes towards the end when she's finally re-entering the atmosphere. You see her peace of mind during the re-entry scene, knowing it could go either way. She could live or she could die. She's decided to live, but she's not afraid to die. And there's that scene where she's just completely at peace as the craft re-enters the atmosphere. And I thought that was really cool. Just really beautifully shot. One of the most beautiful scenes in the whole movie. When we've been in outer space this whole time and now we're returning to the safety of planet Earth. And yeah, it's just a great scene.
That scene kind of like perfectly kind of mimics Apollo 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when
The
they're re-entering
splashdown.
it, but then you see like the condensation as the droplets are coming down on them. And they're like, oh, this is finally real. We're finally up, like almost home.
Yeah, it's a great climax to the movie.
Yeah.
All right, I guess that's good for our first half. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk about The Martian and we'll reveal our mystery movie. So, see you in a little bit.
See you. Hi, welcome back to the Movilith, the show that's crazier than those orangutans and those old tank commercials.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we can get into The Martian here, directed by Ridley Scott, came out in 2015, and this is essentially a survival story on Mars. So it has a lot in common with stories of a person stranded on a desert island. It's kind of like the classic novel Robinson Crusoe or a movie like Castaway.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes place on Mars, so it's like so much further out there and has a whole sort of science fiction element to it.
Oh yeah, it's very good. It's actually adapted from the novel by Andy Weir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andy Weir's like a scientist too, right?
Yeah, he was actually a computer scientist at Sandia Labs here.
Oh, really?
For a while, yeah. And then I believe he was writing it as like a blog post, short story format, and he put it out there. And what was really interesting about it at that time was that like people they would read it and then they would like send in little corrections saying that like well, this wouldn't happen because and they'll describe the physics of like what's going on. Yeah. And then he would rewrite it and edit it and with all this new input and such, and that's why like now it's a very accurate film.
It's not science fiction. It's as near fact as it could possibly be. So the challenges are reality, not fantasy.
And you read the whole book, right?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah. It's one of those books where I had saw the movie trailer.
Yeah.
And then I told myself, oh, no, this is actually based off of a book because I saw it at Barnes & Noble. So then I went to Barnes & Noble and I bought the book. Yeah. And I told myself, I'm going to read this right before the movie comes out. So it gave me a timeline to finish the book.
Nice, that's cool.
Yeah.
And this movie takes place in the near future, like 2035-ish, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it like depicts like a future NASA and the sort of missions they would be involved in that time period.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess we could explain the plot of this movie basically is there's a crew on Mars and there's a massive sandstorm that hits the crew on Mars, and they have to make an emergency evacuation, and they believe one of their crew members, he seemingly gets killed, and they all have to flee. Mm-hmm. But later they find out, it turns out he survived, and now he's just stranded alone on Mars, and he has to go back to their habitat and kind of like assess what he has, and this could sort of lead to our clip here, which is the initial sort of survival, like Matt Damon's character waking up, he has this puncture wound, and it's sort of like him realizing like he's been stranded on Mars and trying to assess like what's going on. Mm-hmm. So we could throw to our first clip here.
Okay.
Oxygen level critical. Oxygen level critical. Oxygen level critical. Pressure stable.
That looks painful.
Oh yeah, that's one problem done. Now on to the next.
Yeah. And this movie really is about like a series of obstacles that he has to face. There's the initial recovery, the puncture wound, and sort of like assessing what he has and what he doesn't have.
Yeah.
Then there's the whole thing about rationing the food that he does have while having to figure out a way to grow more food, otherwise he's going to starve to death. Later, there's setting up communication with Earth, traveling basically outside the hab at all. There's a resupply failure from NASA. There's like all these obstacles. There's so many points where he could have died, and they just keep pushing forward, and they manage to overcome them.
Oh yeah.
And this movie's sort of half survival story, half rescue mission. So like Matt Damon on Mars, it's all about him surviving, and you can even see that scene like where it's similar to like somebody finding themselves stranded on a desert island. Like they wake up on the shore with their face in the sand. You see him kind of do that with the Martian soil there. But yeah, then the other half of the movie is what's going on down at NASA headquarters, realizing that he survived and trying to put together a rescue mission and supply missions to give him more food to buy them time until they can finally come and rescue him.
Seeing the NASA part is pretty funny. Like over at Mission Control,
and they get into like the bureaucratic politics of NASA while still being like a love letter to NASA. Like one character I really like in the movie is Chiwetel Ejiofor's character. He's the guy that's sort of coordinating all the different departments at NASA, and he's sort of like all over the place during in the rescue mission part of the movie.
Yeah, that helps with like what was it, satellite trajectory and such, and then he's kind of also was doing like a little bit of PR stuff because they were trying to like sell the idea to.
You see them doing press conferences and stuff.
Yeah. What was it, Jeff Daniels' character?
Yeah, he's interesting as like the head of NASA at that point. He's having to deal a lot with like the public relations of it. And then they also talk about JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, which is a real thing that NASA. It's part of NASA. Benedict Wong's character is really interesting as the head of JPL there.
Yeah.
This movie probably has one of the best depictions of simulated gravity. Like a lot of movies depict the like rotating centrifuge that creates that centrifugal force that simulates gravity. But I think this movie has the best depiction of that because they show how they have like a really big ship with like really wide hallways, and you see them floating through the different areas, and certain parts of the ship are zero gravity, but certain parts are the rotating part that creates that centrifugal force, that inertial force that creates gravity for them. So I really liked this movie's depiction of the science. It's very realistic when it gets into that.
Yeah, I like that one because it's also kind of reminiscent back to like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
When you see it, because like these rooms would have to be massive.
Yeah.
And then to create like enough room for them to walk around and
yeah.
such.
If they're too narrow, I imagine like how scary it would be to go from that part of the ship where it's rotating to the part where it's zero gravity, in that hallway, in that like part where it's like spinning. But this movie shows those big hallways make it a lot easier for somebody to just like flow between them.
I think what I also liked about this one is like when the disaster happens and when they're eventually like, trying to pick up Watney's character, the whole world is watching.
Yeah.
And it's a lot like in Apollo 13, like the whole world was watching that.
This whole movie is really a testament to the power of human survival, the power of human ingenuity, the power of science, things like that. And so this movie does take a little bit of creative license, but I'd say probably more than any of the movies on this list, it really adheres deeply to the science. And like you said, Andy Weir he's a scientist, and so and it was a lot of peer-reviewed type stuff. So that's what makes it interesting that a lot of that science came into the movie that way.
Yeah, it's funny because he actually built the program that kind of was able to figure out like when was the good like window to go from Earth to Mars, and then after this disaster happened, figure out like when they do their like the ship's like journey back to Mars, how many days that would all take and such. So all the dates of everything that's happening in there are pretty accurate.
Nice, that's interesting.
Yeah, thanks to the program that he built.
Yeah. How long did they say a mission to Mars would take? Like about a year of travel from Earth to Mars?
It depends on our orbits.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like we could probably do it in like 6 months or so.
Yeah, if they're close enough in their orbit. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to launch, we'll meet up with Mars, and then you just have to kind of stay there until our orbits line again for the next best trajectory home where we don't use as much fuel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so now it's time to get into our fourth and final movie here, and we're going to have to get into the spoiler zone with this one. And I say that because simply by revealing this movie, it's a bit of a minor spoiler, because we've revealed that the topic of this episode is plausible space movies. They don't really quite go into the realm of sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And this movie sort of plays with the idea that it might be a science fiction movie, but ultimately it is a space movie as we're defining. It's very within the realm of plausibility. And of course, the movie we're talking about is Ad Astra, starring Brad Pitt, directed by James Gray. And this movie's interesting because this is a somber movie, but it's packed with a lot of action, so that kind of helps balance it out. But essentially, this movie is sort of like Apocalypse Now in outer space.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, you got like the mission briefing scene at the beginning, and then he has all these sort of spots that he has to stop off on his ultimate mission to find the sort of Kurtz-like figure, which is his father, who kind of went crazy. So that's what makes it really interesting. It's really an Apocalypse Now in outer space kind of vibe.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this movie's about an astronaut named Roy McBride who's tasked with going on a mission to try and communicate with his father, who's gone absolutely crazy on this mission, searching for intelligent life way out on the edges of our solar system near
by Neptune.
New Neptune, And so he's really far out there, and he's convinced that there's intelligent life out there to be found, and he sort of took control of the mission, killed a lot of people that were trying to escape, and just went absolutely bonkers, similar to how Kurtz did in Apocalypse Now. And so Brad Pitt's character, Roy McBride, is really tasked with going on this mission to try and communicate with his father and get him back. And so that's sort of the plot of the movie, and that's what makes it sort of like Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, but also like I guess what the father is using special technology to try to amplify the signal to like reach somebody out in space.
Yeah, and that's causing like electromagnetic fields to like disrupt Earth, right? That's like the reason that they're having to send him out. The mission that Tommy Lee Jones is on is like completely disrupting Earth's communication or something like that.
Yeah, but it was also communication on all of our stations.
Yeah.
I think Mars wasn't affected because Mars, they built their infrastructure into the planet, so they're kind of shielded. Whereas like the moon and Earth, like, you know, everything's on the surface, and that will take the brunt of it, of those communication and the electromagnetic discrepancies.
So it's not just a situation of like a guy that went crazy like out in the margins of our universe. They actually have to like shut down what this guy's doing. They actually have to stop him because it's causing a lot of problems for humans back on Earth and on our other territories.
Yeah. His relationship with his father is very interesting in this movie. It's dark, and one thing that kind of might give it away for some people is that like Ad Astra is Latin for to the stars.
Yeah.
But it's part of a bigger saying that's at NASA.
Yeah.
And it's like per aspera ad astra, which is hardship through the stars.
Yeah.
And here we see that there is a lot of hardship on this journey. And a lot of it has to deal with like the emotions that Brad Pitt's character ends up carrying all the way through to the end when he eventually gets to reunite with his father. And is there a resolution there? It's hard to say. I think it depends on the person watching the film to interpret, because you know, he has this grand idea of his father. Everybody knows his father in this film, and once he finally reaches the end, he sees like how crazy his father has gone, and he's still even trying to like bring him in and ground him back into like, you know, back with NASA, back with Earth, but his father just is too far gone. Yeah. Much like Colonel Kurtz was too far gone in Apocalypse Now, and then just succumbs to his demons.
The madness.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie has that in common with Gravity, where it's a person on like an inner emotional journey while they're on this like epic journey through outer space. And I really like that they have those like robot therapy sessions where you have to have like this little therapy session with like an AI robot.
McBride, Roy R., are you ready for your psychological evaluation?
Yes.
Please begin.
And they won't clear you to continue your mission until they feel like you've got to the bottom of what your issue is. And so there's that scene with Brad Pitt where he's sort of, it's almost like you're talking to yourself. It's like it makes you confront your own issue.
And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be my dad.
Your psychological evaluation has been approved.
It sort of forces you to confront your own issues, and that was, I thought, one interesting thing that this movie did.
Oh, yeah. It's like Willard's like, he's like, shit, I'm still only in Saigon.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, yeah, it was like, definitely a similar journey of a person having to confront some issues that they're dealing with. But I feel like by the end of it, Brad Pitt's character comes to a point of peace where, so there's like the idea, the difference between nihilism and existentialism. So like nihilism is the idea that nothing in life is worth doing, nothing's worth pursuing because nothing has any meaning. And you should just, just lay down and die. You shouldn't even eat breakfast in the morning. Like that's what nihilism is. It's a completely hopeless idea. Whereas existentialism, and some people confuse them a little bit, existentialism is the idea that the meaning in life comes from what we make of it. It doesn't come from some sort of higher power or some sort of intelligent life like Tommy Lee Jones' character is searching for. It comes from what we make it. And so at the end of the movie, I think Brad Pitt's character, his journey is, he's engaging in existentialism, not nihilism. His love interest in the movie, Liv Tyler, he's trying to get back to that place where they can be in love again. And I think by the end of the movie, he realizes he's overcome his issues and he can go back to Earth, go back to her, and live the rest of his life without worrying about these issues with his father and this outer space stuff anymore. And I thought that movie like had a lot of emotional resonance when it gets to that.
Because when we watched like the movie in the very beginning, when he's like on that space antenna, it's very well, like when he's kind of going through the motions and talking about how like he sees these people here, but it's kind of just like another day at work for him. Like, because when we think about space, like I think it would be awesome to go to space. Yeah. But he's this kind of person that's just kind of going through the motions. Yeah. And it kind of reminded me a lot of that Elton John song, Rocket Man. Yeah. The song's about the guy that's kind of like treating outer space as just like as a trucker would.
Yeah, like when he's out in outer space, he misses his family, he misses being on Earth. But when he's on Earth with his family, he misses the awesomeness of being out on a rocket in outer space. Yeah. And so it's that idea that he's never really satisfied either way. He's sort of always in flux.
And you can see that how like, he keeps thinking about his relationship with Liv Tyler in these little cutback scenes. But, when you see him there, he's kind of detached from her and he doesn't even like pursuing something greater, like a greater relationship with her. Because he's probably just thinking, well, at least in my mind, he's thinking about going back to outer space.
He needed to go on this final mission. And it turns out that he was able to solve the issues that he had with his father and ultimately go back. But it's like you said, it's not like a completely, everything's like not tied in a nice bow. I mean, his father went absolutely nuts and he had to realize that he just had to let him go. And that's like the definitive moment in the movie where like this, we're at least within our solar system, we're alone out here. And it's that existential idea that like the meaning in life will come from what we make it, not from anything beyond ourselves.
Oh yeah. Probably Tommy Lee Jones' character probably thinking as a society, like he's thinking too much about our civilization.
Yeah. He thinks he can save our civilization with something that's out there. Yeah. I guess we could mention some of the actors that were in Space Cowboys. Tommy Lee Jones and Donald Sutherland obviously are both in this movie. Yeah. But the guy I mentioned earlier, Lauren Dean, he plays a small part in this movie as an astronaut on one of the sort of mini missions that Brad Pitt's going on within the larger mission.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess Hollywood just decided this guy Lauren Dean looked like an astronaut, and so they clearly cast him in this movie because he was in Apollo 13
Mm-hmm.
and Space Cowboy. So it's kind of a nice tribute to the genre itself.
You know what's really fun about this movie? Well, it's very somber, but like,
yeah.
In our discussion here, it's that there's like a little picture. It's around like the 19-minute mark, 19.
Yeah.
And you see they'll reference like Tommy Lee Jones' character, but the picture they use is actually the same picture from Space Cowboys.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
but they just like changed like one of the patches because it says NASA, I think, in Space Cowboys, but in this one they just changed the patch to match the United States Space Command.
That's cool. Because that's like in Apocalypse Now, they used pictures of a younger Marlon Brando. He did another movie where he played a soldier.
Yeah, it was
so
like Green Beret.
Yeah, so they used those old pictures in Apocalypse Now to represent the young Kurtz and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's always interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
I also gone full circle. Tommy Lee Jones wanted to just wanted to go to outer space.
Yeah.
He goes there, and then he goes even further.
Yeah. Exactly. And I guess we could talk about some of the more fun aspects of this movie. This movie has a lot of good action.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's sort of somber, but it's sort of balanced out with a lot of the action. We have like the initial sequence where space elevator sort of collapse thing happens and Brad Pitt has to parachute down. That's a crazy sequence. And then there's like the whole moon shootout scene where they explain that the moon is a disputed territory. Like certain different countries have territory on the moon and there's sometimes get into these skirmishes. So I guess that could lead to our scene here from Ad Astra, which this scene kind of shows some of the action sequences that the movie's really good at. So we could throw that here.
Roy? Yes, Colonel. Look at it. The big blue marble. Never ceases to amaze me.
Lieutenant, you clocking this? Lieutenant?
Alpha, what do we got here? Alpha, we have what looks like unidentified rovers approaching our position. Possible pirate activity. And I got a couple of VIPs with me.
Roger, moving to flank you. Alpha, we may need some ballistic help up here. Potential hostile.
Here we go again. Fighting over resources.
Appears to be pirates, possibly looking for valuables. We'll send ballistic support ASAP.
What the hell am I doing here?
Alpha, we need backup ASAP. We're being ambushed.
Give me a weapon.
Hold on.
LRV-3 down. LRV-2 down.
Alpha, we're gonna go off south to reach the far side.
I have a puncture.
Roy!
I have a puncture.
Roy, you alright?
I'm okay.
Alpha, repeat. We need... Lieutenant! Oh, Lord!
We are not clear. I repeat, we are not clear. We have multiple enemy craft in pursuit.
Roy, they're trying to ram us.
Command, Lieutenant is KIA. We've lost our escort. Request immediate support, over.
Nice.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah. You know, I love that, like, Brad Pitt's, like, little internal dialogue that he has.
Yeah.
And, because that's what kind of really made me think between, like, this movie being, like, Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Because, like, I had, like, a little quote here where it says, like, when they arrive on the moon, it says, like, if my dad could see this, he'd tear it all down.
All the hopes we ever had for space travel, covered up by drink stands and t-shirt vendors. If my dad could see this now, he'd tear it all down.
And when he says that, like, you see how, like, the moon is starting to become more like Disneyland.
Yeah.
In the way they had, like, a little alien, like, somebody dressed up as an alien there greeting it, like,
they had,
the
like,
kids.
a gift shop and, like, a tourist place. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when Apocalypse Now is like, he wasn't in their army anymore.
They were gonna make me a major for this. And I wasn't even in their army anymore.
Yeah, Brad Pitt's narration in this movie, he really tries to match, like, that tone of Martin Sheen's narration in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
That's great. This movie takes place in the 2100s, right? Like early 2100s.
Yeah.
So it's like pretty far into the future compared to like some of these other movies we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first movie that goes beyond NASA. It's like a militarized space command. It's not NASA in charge of space anymore, essentially. It's like we've gone so far that we're essentially getting into like conflict with other nations and stuff in outer space. So we've become a lot more militarized.
Yeah, because I believe the organization is United States Space Command.
Yeah, in the movie. Yeah, they show things like when they're on Mars, they show that the soldiers have like red camouflage fatigues on and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And even though this movie is beyond NASA, it does reference like the history of NASA, like the landing on the moon. Those rovers in that scene are similar to the original NASA rovers that they used. The moon stuff, chimps in space, going to Mars, beyond like that. So it references the history of NASA itself, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. One thing that kind of like really took a hold of me was when this movie came out and I saw like, you know, they had the space antenna.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, and I like that sequence in the very beginning, which is like the first like real action sequence you see in there.
Yeah.
It's like when he like does that free fall. Reminded me of like watching Felix Baumgartner do his free fall here in New Mexico.
Yeah, dropping from so high up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be so cool.
Well, I remember watching the movie initially. You don't know that Brad Pitt is going to use a parachute. He's just kind of like falling. You're like, what the hell is he? How's he going to survive this? But then you see he has like a parachute when he gets close enough that he can launch and save himself.
What's crazy though is like there's a lot of G-force that's pulled on there. A lot of people, I guess, would mostly just like pass out. I think if you're not prepared for it. Felix Baumgartner had talked about him, like he almost passed out.
Yeah.
And such, but his, I'm sure they would have had safety mechanisms because like, if Felix Baumgartner had passed out, there's like a sensor that would automatically deploy the chute. But
that makes sense.
Yeah. In the movie, you see other people fall from around the same height. I'm sure they probably would have landed, hopefully safely. Oh yeah, one other thing that I kind of wanted to point out that I've kept on coming back to with the Apocalypse Now, which is also, as we had discussed in Apocalypse Now with a discussion about Heart of Darkness.
Yeah.
Was like this idea of like colonization and how like, because we have discovery, which, you know, once you discover something, you want to explore.
Yeah.
And after exploration, then you go into colonization.
Yeah.
And as a society, you know, as we venture further and further out, like what was this colonization kind of look like? And I think we kind of briefly discussed it and described it.
Yeah.
Is how like with the moon, it just starts to become like, you know, more property, like more this like Disneyland type style. And then you look at Mars. Mars is an outpost.
Yeah.
That slowly will probably start to become more of like a destination for people and such. And then as you go further and further out, like, if we ever do encounter anybody out there, what would that entail?
Yeah.
How would we be the ones being colonized, or would we colonize them?
Yeah.
That would be something interesting. That's a whole other like movie segment though.
And I think this movie shows that like we're going to continue to explore outer space without having solved a lot of the issues that we have here on Earth. We're just going to transport a lot of our issues out into the universe on a bigger scale.
Yeah, because all it's about is like consumption.
Yeah,
you know, just consume
resources.
All this stuff.
Yeah, territory.
Yeah, no matter what, there's a finite amount of resources out there, especially for materials used for spacefaring.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining us again here on the Movilith. Perhaps in the future we'll do a part 3 on this topic with movies that genuinely do cross over into the realm of sci-fi, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Interstellar, and Sunshine. Movies that are still rooted in like NASA, but they are genuine sci-fi movies. And then also be sure to check out our YouTube page. You can find all of our episodes there, youtube.com/@themovielith. And we'll see you next time.
Y'all have a good one. And check out these movies.